So maybe you're new to writing and recording music. What should your go-to plugins be? Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you are new to music production and you've gone to websites such as Sweetwater and you're looking at all of the software that you can purchase, it can kind of be overwhelming. Hundreds, if not thousands of options, ranging from virtual instruments to dynamics to all kinds of things. So which ones should you get, or which ones do you already have access to with your DAW? In this video, I'm gonna go over 4 of my main go-to plugins that you should be familiar with if you are starting out with music production. Now in this video, I am not going to be talking about virtual instruments. That is a whole nother ball of wax that can really depend on what kind of music you're writing. But actually I will share one with you that is super easy to use, it's free, and there's a lot of options. It's Spitfire's Labs. So if you use Google Spitfire Labs, check it out. Lots of virtual instruments for free, and they sound great. All right, and before we get into my top 4 plugins, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel grow a ton. Also, if you want to continue to support the channel, down below there are links to the gear that I use in my studio, and if you purchase anything through those links, it helps support the channel. And one last thing, for all of those who have listened to my new project, down below there's a link to the music. We've gotten amazing feedback on it, and I would love to hear what you think about it as well. All right, so the first plugin that I usually reach for is a compressor. Now, most DAWs come with a compressor, and in most cases, that one will work just fine. In fact, there are times where I still use the compressor that comes with Cubase Pro. And there are different types of compressors, but we're not gonna get into that in this video. So like I said, the compressor is usually the first plugin that I reach for if I'm not using my actual analog compressor. But if I'm using the in-the-box plugin, I am reaching for my SSL bus compressor. Now that one came with the UC1 that I purchased about a year ago, and I think for a plug-in compressor, it sounds really good. Now this one can be very expensive if you're buying it on its own. It can be, I think, $350, but sometimes it goes on sale, so you can pick it up for like $30 to $50, or if you buy a UC1, you get it included. But let's say you don't want to spend that kind of money. You can also buy a Waves plugin. They have some good ones too. They have some ones that mimic the old 1176s. So those are some of the plugins that I use, but your DAW should have a compressor in it that is plenty good, especially if you're just starting out in music production. Okay, moving on to EQ. Again, your DAW is probably gonna have an EQ with it, and it will probably work just fine. I even use the DAW EQ that comes with Cubase almost on every single project. Now there's a couple different types of EQs, but again, we're not gonna get into that in this video. The EQ that I use most on everything is, again, the SSL channel strip EQ. I used to think all EQs were created equally. That is not the case at all. After getting the SSL one, it really opened up my eyes to the quality of difference depending on what kind of aftermarket plugin you buy for EQ. So usually what I do in working with EQs is I'll always run it through my SSL first, kind of get an overall improvement on sound. Then I'll use the DAW within Cubase, the EQ inside of Cubase, and then I'll kind of do some more fine tuning when it comes to EQ. But if I didn't have the SSL, I could easily get by using the Cubase built-in EQ. Now, is it as good as the SSL one? Maybe not, but it comes with the DAW, so it's kind of free to use. So the compressor is usually the number one thing I reach for first, and then I go to my EQ. All right, so the next 2 I use on every single track a ton. They're more of like effects. The first one is Reverb. Now again, most all DAWs will come with some sort of reverb that can work perfectly fine for whatever you need it to do. So get very familiar with that one. That one could treat you just fine. The one I prefer to use is the Valhalla Room Reverb. You can actually pick that up for only 50 bucks from their website. Again, there are a lot of reverb plugins out there. Some of them all sound similar, some sound very different. Some of them is just the interface that looks different. Some of them are easier to use, harder to use, more fine adjustment tools. But for the most part, the one you have in your DAW will do what you need it to do. And the last plugin that I would recommend getting familiar with is a delay. And there are a couple different types of delays. There's mono delay, stereo delay, ping pong delay. But most all of the time, your DAW again will come with this plugin, and it will more than likely work just fine. In fact, the only delay I ever use is the one from Cubase. It does the job perfectly fine, and it's just easy to use. It's great. Again, these are plugins that you should become familiar with when working in music production. And again, the DAW will usually provide a lot of these plugins. Now, if there's a specific sound that you really like or you're trying to find, then you might need to search some sort of third-party plugin. And of course, that is a very popular route to go, but I feel if you are good inside of your DAW, those plugins will work fine for a very long time. I actually recommend keeping your plugin count on the low side. Just because you buy a plugin doesn't mean it's gonna make your song sound better or your instrument sound better. If you're using it wrong, you might be better off just using the plugin that came with your DAW. Or it could just be a waste of money. Now I will say it is fun to spend money and get quite a few virtual instruments, but when it comes to your compression, your reverb, your delays, things like that, there are some pretty basic options that should be able to do you just fine. So if you don't have the money to spend on these plugins, use the ones in your DAW and don't feel pressured into spending a bunch of money on plugins that you probably don't really need. So again, just a quick recap, the plugins that I recommend you get familiar with and comfortable with when you're doing music production is a compressor, EQ, reverb, and delay. And as I've said over this whole video, your DAW probably comes with all of these. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I'd love to hear what you think below, especially for someone who's spent some time doing music production and maybe what some of your go-to plugins are. Are you a fan of keeping your overall plugin count down, or are you someone who likes to have a lot of them and maybe some of the certain plugins provide some sort of inspiration? All right, thank you again. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you later.